And so before we get into what we're going to talk about today, I just wanted to open up with a quick story. And this is going back to, I think, early college years. But growing up, from the time I was legally allowed to work there, I worked at camp every single summer. For those of you who know, I grew up at Silver Lake Wesleyan Camp, which is in Ontario. It's just outside of Perth, Ontario. And this is a camp that, to this day, every single summer, I go to this camp for at least a week. And everyone who's known me for a couple years knows that every year in July, I kind of disappear for a little bit to Ontario, and that's where I am. And I love volunteering at the camp now, and I used to work there. And I've just seen so many incredible things happen at that camp, and I just love it there. And so I always worked there. And kind of there, now it's totally different because there's program staff, and so people are paid to be counselors and run programs and games and all that. But back whenever I was growing up, the only jobs you had were kind of grounds crew, dishwasher, and kind of housekeeping, those sort of jobs. Operations is what they called it. So there was kind of a totem. Your first job, you always had to do your time in the dish pit. And the dish pit was like 6 hours a day of just washing dishes, and it was some of the best and worst times of my life. And I had to do that for about 3 years. But finally, after 3 years, I graduated to the dream job, which was the grounds crew. And the reason the grounds crew is the dream job, and I'm sure you're going to understand why here in a second, you got to take out the trash, you got to mow the lawn, and you got to clean the bathrooms. And that was just the best. Taking out the trash will forever be the greatest memories of camp. But it's not like normal taking out the trash, right? You get to drive a tractor, which was cool, and then you get to go visit Ernie, the guy at the dump, who's just got all kinds of stories. And it was just one of those things. It was relaxing. And then mowing the lawn, I loved doing that because there was so much grass to cut. And it just felt like you could spend a whole day out mowing the grass, not talking to anybody, just in your zone, going away. And cleaning the bathrooms was, I'll be honest, that one wasn't that good. But, you can't have everything. And so when I finally made it to grounds crew, right, you don't want to mess it up. You want to make sure things go well. You don't want to do anything wrong. You want to make sure everyone's happy with the work you're doing. But it's camp and your kids, and you're bound to mess up. And so I did this for a few years, and then eventually I actually upgraded to this job they created for me, which was like a media director. I started putting together essentially these videos each week of the camp. So I'd follow the kids around with my camera, make a video all week, and compile it into like a 2.5-minute video that would show at the end of the week, and then we'd send it home with the parents, and it was kind of promo for the camp. But in order for me to do that job, I had to get a government grant. This was back in the golden days when churches got government grants. And so we got a government grant for me, but the government grant started me in May, and camps didn't start till June. So I was the only one at the campground in the month of May, and I needed work. So I defaulted back to grounds crew. And I was loving it because they just said, mow the grass. But whenever there's one guy trying to mow the grass in this entire campground, essentially I would start at the beginning of the week, finish, and then restart on Monday. Just mowing grass all week long and like cutting back the brush from the winter that had grown forward and doing all these things. And so I just loved it because I was alone on the campground. I was going to sleep by 8 o'clock. I was waking up at 6. I felt better than I'd ever felt. And then this one day, I'm on this mower, and it was like a brand new mower. I'm not a mower guy, so I don't know the company. I know it wasn't John Deere, but it was some company. It was nice. And I'm going along, and the thing about camp is you're in the wilderness, right? You're in the middle of the woods. And there are sticks and there's rocks everywhere. And so part of it, when you're mowing, is every 50 feet or so, you're getting off the mower, picking up a rock, throwing it in the woods, or you're picking up a stick, throwing it in the woods, right? And there was this one path that I was going on, and to this day, I promise you, there was no rock. But there was a rock. And so I'm driving along, and all of a sudden I just hear crank, and the mower stopped working. This brand new, precious mower that they trusted me, supposed to be the mature college student kid with. And I'd messed up the belt somehow, and the blade, or not the belt, but the blade had kind of come unhinged, and it wasn't spinning anymore. And so I'm freaking out, right? Because they just told me it's a brand new mower, don't mess it up. And within a week, I messed it up. And I'm sitting there freaking out, kind of like, okay, what am I going to do? Do I try and fix it myself? Nope, don't even bother. You're not a handyman. You're just going to make it worse. I got to tell my boss. I don't want to tell my boss because then we're going to have a discussion about rocks. And he's going to say, well, did you look for rocks? And I'm going to say, yes. And he's going, well, not good enough. And so I'm having this whole conversation, and I'm just sitting there over and over again in my head going, why couldn't I just go back and not drive over that? Why couldn't I just not mow that area? Why couldn't I have just lifted the blade higher? Why couldn't I have, and all these scenarios in my head of, I just want to take it back. I want to fix it. Maybe I could just get super glue and just, or duct tape. It's red-green, right? Duct tape. Just duct tape and put it back together, and it'll work. No one will notice. And so you're thinking of all these scenarios of how you can get the blame off yourself or how you can fix it without anyone noticing. And I came to the conclusion that I just had to go and I had to tell my boss. And so I went and I told him right away, well, why weren't you clearing the rocks? Well, I tried to clear the rocks, but I didn't see it. Well, take me to the spot. And so we went to the spot, and he spent probably way too long, probably like an hour, searching for that rock because he wanted to find it. And everywhere we looked, we couldn't see any sign of a rock coming out of the ground. We couldn't see what I had hit, but I clearly hit something. And so after that, luckily, they didn't make me pay for it or anything like that. It was just an accident. I was going along. But it meant that our good mower was out of commission. And if any of you have worked at camp before, you know that normally things can get fixed fairly quick, but at camp things run on a little different clock. So there was a few weeks where we didn't have this mower, and that meant I had to use the old mower, which was half the size, and it was half the speed, and it just was not as fun. And every time that I would mow that area, I was out there double-checking, making sure no rocks. And every time I drove past that section of road, and even to this day when I drive into the camp, it's right off to the left, and when I see that section, I think back, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I could have fixed that. And so the rest of that May, whenever I was there alone, I just couldn't wait for the rest of the campers to show up and the staff so that I could stop mowing and just put this behind me and stop feeling guilty every time I look at my boss whenever I'm driving the older mower. And he's just thinking, shouldn't have trusted him, right? But even if you've never broken something like that, and I'm sure most of us have had that situation in our life where we've broken something like that, I'm sure you know what it feels like to wish that things could be fixed. And in a way, I think change feels a lot like that sometimes. When things change in a way that we don't want them to, we just want it to go back. We feel like something's broken in our life. And when that happens, often the first thing we try to do is fix it. We want things to go back to the way we were. We want things to just switch back. I know some of you, maybe it's been a while since you've dated, but I'm sure it's still the same whenever you're married. And you let those words come out of your mouth, and then immediately it's like, no, I didn't say it. I'm sorry. And you just know that what you're about to say is going to change your relationship. And everything in you is just, I wish I could take that back, but it's out there. And now, that you can't change that. You've said those words. Or if you make a decision, right, like you buy something big without telling your spouse, and you know, I shouldn't have bought this. She's going to get mad at me when I get home, or he's going to be real mad at me for this when I get home. But you can't take that back. The decision's been made, and it's going to change your relationship. There's a fracture. Something's going to have to happen. And as much as we wish we could just go back and take back the decision, a lot of times this just isn't possible. And so sometimes change means that whatever it is that's broken simply can't be fixed. And it can leave us feeling sad or angry or frustrated or even helpless. Have any of you seen the movie that came out a few years ago, Inside Out? It's a Pixar movie. Not many. All right. You should watch more Pixar. So this is a movie. It's kind of an interesting concept. It's following a girl, Riley, and she moves from her hometown in Minnesota to San Francisco, California. And this was a huge change for her. And the movie, the way it kind of works is you're inside of the minds of the people, the characters, and each emotion inside the character is a different character in the movie. And it kind of gives you an inside look into how our emotions can affect things and how change can affect us in ways, and things that change in our life can affect us in ways that we just don't understand or we we want it fixed, but it just can't be fixed. And it wasn't easy for her to be moving from Minnesota all the way to San Francisco. And so there's just this clip at the dinner table where they're eating supper, and I'm sure some of you have had pretty much the same conversation with kids over the years. Or maybe you've been the kid in that conversation. And there's just a quick clip that I just want us to look at, Buffy, if you play it now.
So, as it turns out, the green trash can is not recycling. It's for greens, like compost and eggshells. And the blue one is recycling. And the black one
Riley is acting so weird. Why is she acting so weird?
What do you expect? All the islands are down.
Joy would know what to do.
That's it. Until she gets back, we just do what Joy would do.
Great idea. Anger, fear, disgust. How are we supposed to be happy?
Hey, Riley, I've got good news. I found a junior hockey league right here in San Francisco, and get this, tryouts are tomorrow after school. What luck, right?
Hockey.
Uh-oh, what do we do?
Guys, here, you pretend to be Joy.
Won't it be great to be back out on the ice?
Oh yeah, that sounds fantastic.
What was that? That wasn't anything like Joy.
Because I'm not Joy?
Yeah, no kidding.
Did you guys pick up on that?
Sure did.
Something's wrong. Should we ask her?
Let's probe, but keep it subtle so she doesn't notice. So, how was the first day of school?
She's probing us.
I'm done. You pretend to be Joy.
What? Okay,
It was fine, I guess. I don't know. Oh, very smooth. That was just like Joy.
Something is definitely going on.
She's never acted like this before. What should we do? We're gonna find out what's happening, but we'll need support. Signal the husband.
Ahem.
With a nice pass over to Reed, comes across that right.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
What? Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What? What is it, woman? What?
He's making that stupid face again.
I could strangle him right now.
Signal him again.
So, Riley, how was school?
Gotta be kidding me.
For this, we gave up that Brazilian helicopter pilot?
boo, I'll be Joy.
School was great, all right?
Riley, is everything okay?
Sir, she just rolled her eyes at us.
What is her deal? All right, make a show of force. I don't want to have to put the foot down.
No, not the foot.
Riley, I do not like this new attitude.
Oh, I'll show you attitude, okay? No. Stay happy!
What is your problem? Just leave me alone.
Sir, reporting high levels of sass.
Take it to DEFCON 2.
You heard that, gentlemen? DEFCON 2.
Listen, young lady, I don't know where this disrespectful attitude came from.
You want a piece of this, Pops? Come and get it!
Yeah, well...
Here it comes. Prepare the foot.
Keys to safety position. Ready to launch on your command, sir.
Just shut up!
Fire!
That's it. Go to your room. Now.
Foot is down. The foot is down.
Good job, gentlemen. That could have been a disaster.
Well, that was a disaster.
So you can see there, it's kind of an interesting look, and all throughout the movie it kind of goes like that, where you're following the emotions inside, but it shows just how, if any of you have gone through a big change in your life, you can kind of relate to all the emotions that Riley was feeling when she's trying to process this huge, unfixable change in her life, where she had no say in them moving to San Francisco, away from her friends. But here she is, and she's stuck in this. And so maybe for you, or in my life, I know it's been this at different times, but just for me, it's been losing a job. Or maybe for you, it's been having your role change at work. Maybe it's just shifting departments. You had no say in the matter, and now you're stuck in this position that you just want to get out of, but there's nothing you can do. No matter how much you want things to go back to the way they were, you know it just isn't going to happen. Could be a relationship with a friend or a relationship with your child, and this has had a shift. Something's changed in the relationship, something's broken. Something was said in anger or out of fear, and there's been a break in that relationship, and you just want it to be fixed, but you know it can't. No matter how hard you try, it just feels broken. And we know that these fixes, they don't happen overnight. You can't just fix the changes that happen in your life. You can't fix the things that feel broken in your life right away. It takes time. And so when you're going through changes like that, I think it feels like it's the end of the story, or it feels like it's unfixable. There's no return. And you may have been through these times in your life where you're going through these changes and you just feel alone. And you've wondered why God hasn't come in to fix what feels broken. You've been praying, you've been crying out to him, asking for him to help you, and it just feels like you're getting no answer. It just feels like what's been broken in your life, it's just not fixable. No matter how much duct tape and super glue you use to try and put that thing back together, it's just not going to go back together. It's not fixed. It's broken. And where you wish that there was another chapter, God closed the book. Where you wish there was a comma, God puts a period at the end of the sentence. And instead of feeling rooted and safe, you start to feel frustrated. You feel disappointed. You feel disappointed with the change in your life that feels so permanent. And you might even feel like you aren't rooted securely anymore. And if you've ever felt like that, know that you're not the only one. I think almost all of us have felt that way at some point in our life. And almost every person that has ever experienced a difficult or painful change in their life, they've thought these same things. And that's why it's important for us to know that, well, God hasn't promised to change everything the way we want him to. He has promised us something else. And when we know what that promise is and what it means for our lives, it becomes easier to stay rooted in him, even when he doesn't fix things that we think are broken. And so we're going to look in Isaiah 43, verse 2. We're just going to look at a small passage. And it's in the Old Testament. And if you've read the Old Testament, you know that at times it can be a really frustrating story. Because throughout the Old Testament, the main storyline is of God's relationship with the children of Israel. His chosen people who, when things are going well, seem to forget all about him and run away from him until things get so bad that they come back. And so through a man named Abraham, who I'm sure you know and we've talked about, God created the nation of Israel in an area of the world that we now call the Middle East. And it was through that group of people that God would one day send to the world his son, Jesus. And so this group of people, their problem is they just kept breaking things, mainly their relationship with God. And even though God chose them for this important task, for this important thing, they still got caught up in doing these selfish things. And these things not only got them into trouble, but they also went against God's plan. And so other nations would come and take over, and they would be in captivity. We often read in the Old Testament that they're actually not in their homeland anymore. They're captives. They're slaves for others. And this is because they kept going against God's plan. And so I'm sure during these times that they were in captivity and they would remember God, they would be crying out to him, asking him to fix the situation. And sometimes we see that God did step in and he fixed things. And other times he made them wait and he didn't fix things right away. But no matter what God did with the changes the nation of Israel was dealing with, he did promise something they could hold on to. And it's the same thing he promises us, Isaiah 43, verse 2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. And when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. So as we read this verse, there's something we can't skip over, and it's the way that it's worded. When you pass through the waters, when you pass through the rivers, when you walk through the fire. In other words, things are going to change. That's inevitable. We know it is. And so you will find yourself in difficult times. And it's not a matter of if you do, but when you do. And so if that's true, what God promises us is that he will be with us. We are going to face trials. We are going to face troubles. There's going to be hard times. That's just life. But God promises that he will be with us. And he may not answer our prayers on our time, but he will be with us. And we will get through those times. And so I think this is actually good news, because if change is going to happen, I want to know that the God who never changes is going to be with me when it does. And so I want us to leave today remembering that God is with us. It's a simple reminder, but one I think in times of crisis and times when things are good, we often forget that God is with us always. So no matter what you're going through, no matter what's happening, how hurt you feel, or how distant you might feel, know that God is with you. And so when you're hurting from the changes that life has brought you, I don't know about you, but for me, the last thing I want to feel is alone. I want to know that someone's going to be with me, someone to walk with me, someone by my side to help me through those times. And just knowing that someone is there can make you feel so much better. And so this promise that God is with us is a life-changing promise. And so when God finally fulfilled his promise and sent Jesus into the world through the nation of Israel, one of Jesus' names was Emmanuel, meaning God with us. And so God wanted us to know, even in his name, that Jesus' life on earth was direct proof that God is with us at all times. And during his ministry on earth, Jesus said something similar to God's promise in Isaiah. In John 16:33, he says, "I have told you these things, so that in me you may have peace in this world. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." So he's saying you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And so Jesus has never shied away from the fact that we'll be facing troubling changes in this life. But he's telling us to take heart, have courage, remain strong, because he's overcome the world already. And in other words, we can stay rooted in the fact that there is no change or trouble so big that God can't take care of it. And he's made the promise to never leave us or forsake us. He's made the promise to be with us. And when we're rooted in the truth of that promise, we can find the courage to face any challenge or circumstance. And so what does that mean for us to do, as Jesus said, and take heart in the midst of change? What does it mean to stay rooted in the promise that God is with us? I think it means making a decision. Firstly, you have to choose to make a decision. You have to choose to make a decision to trust God in the middle of your difficult situation. You have to trust that that situation didn't take God by surprise, and you have to trust that God is with you. And then you have to make a decision to change your perspective. And this one's the trickier one. But choose to believe that God's promise of being with you is bigger and better than anything else he could do. Choose to believe that his presence will help you get through whatever it is that you're going through right now. And choose to believe that his presence can keep you rooted through whatever changes you're facing. So choose to trust God in the middle of your difficult situation, and choose to change your perspective. And remember that God is with you, and that promise can carry you through any seemingly broken situation in your life. And so as we get ready to close, I just want you to think about these questions as we leave. Is there one thing in my life that I wish God would fix right now? And what is that thing? And am I willing to choose to trust God and know that he is with me, even if the fix doesn't come when I want it to or how I want it to? So what's the one thing that I wish God would fix in my life, or what is that one thing that needs fixing in my life? And am I willing to choose to trust God and know that he is with me, even if the fix doesn't come when I want it to or how I want it to? Why don't we stand as we close?